To start off our discussion and to give our viewers a kind of background to our topic today, AMCHAM has been here in Sri Lanka for I think more than 30 years now. Can you take us through how AMCHAM has evolved in Sri Lanka?
So the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka, or AMCHAM, is part of a global group of American chambers. And the American chambers are affiliated to the US Chamber of Commerce. American Chamber in Sri Lanka, AMCHAM in Sri Lanka, was set up in 1992. So as you said, 30 years, maybe 32 years since it was set up. So it makes it the largest global business network in the world. And we have, in terms of membership today, as it's evolved, we have about 350 member companies. Then we also have companies in Sri Lanka that represent US businesses. Then we have Sri Lankan companies that have invested in the United States, including companies that haven't started relations, but are looking to start relations. And during that time, we try to help get your business going with the United States. Now, on top of that, we also are connected with US aid in the country, so that's another level of connectivity. And at a national and international level, we also have a direct line into the US Trade Representative's office in Washington, D.C., and that reports directly to the President of the US and is involved in any trade negotiations and so on. So we have those sort of connectivity. So I think it's fair to say that over time we have built significant relationships and partnerships which we are then able to bring to our membership.
The American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka has been around for more than 3 decades. We spoke about AMCHAM in Sri Lanka with its president Shirendra. Stay tuned.
Some bonds give more returns. Get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LMDtv Finance.
The latest issue of LMD is available at lmdmall.lk as well as selected supermarkets and bookshops. You can also access the digital version on WhatsApp and our social media platforms.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is AMCHAM in Sri Lanka, and we are here in conversation with Shirendra, the President of the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka. Shirendra, it's lovely to have you on our show.
Good evening, Ruwandi, and thank you for having me on the show. Happy to be here.
Thank you. To start off our discussion and to give our viewers a kind of background to our topic today, AMCHAM has been here in Sri Lanka for I think more than 30 years now. Can you take us through how AMCHAM has evolved in Sri Lanka?
Sure. So the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka, or AMCHAM, is part of a global group of American chambers. And the American chambers are affiliated to the US Chamber of Commerce. Now, the US Chamber of Commerce was set up in 1912, so it's been around for some time. Originally, it had about 700 members. And today, through its network globally and also with members in the US, it has about 3 million members. So it makes it the largest global business network in the world. American Chamber in Sri Lanka, AMCHAM in Sri Lanka, was set up in 1992. So as you said, 30 years, maybe 32 years since it was set up. We have a full-time secretariat, which is based at the Cinnamon Lakeside Hotel. We have a team of 5 that looks after it. So we have got a significant presence there. And we have, in terms of membership today, as it's evolved, we have about 350 member companies. And that means we have a significantly larger number of representatives from those companies. They tend to be from different groups of companies. So we have the larger US multinationals. So the companies like the Citibanks and MasterCards and Coca-Colas and so on of this world, so they're all members.
Yeah.
Then we also have companies in Sri Lanka that represent US businesses. So for example, Haley's Advantis, which represents FedEx. Then we have Sri Lankan companies that have invested in the United States. So MS Holdings, the company that I've been associated with for many years, is one of those. And we also encourage any other company that has business relations with the US to be a member, including companies that haven't started relations but are looking to start relations. So we do have a category of membership that is a kind of probationary stage where you come in and you join as a member for 2 years. And during that time, we try to help get your business going with the United States.
Interesting. Thank you, Shirendra. I think you set the stage right. Talking of evolution, last year we saw the celebration of 75 years of the Sri Lanka-US relationship. Against this backdrop, how would you say the American Chamber of Commerce has evolved in terms of how it has been helping business interests between the two countries?
Sure. Well, first, as I mentioned, we come under the US Chamber of Commerce, and we are therefore connected with all of the American chambers globally. We have a local or a regional network of American chambers, which is called the American Chambers of Asia Pacific. So that's about 25, and we have connectivity through them. So that always helps us to firstly look at what other countries in the region are doing and stay connected with that piece. Then we have a direct relationship with the US Embassy, particularly with the commercial and economic unit and with the teams in those sections. So if there's anything going on that they think we need to be aware of, or likewise if we see opportunities that we need to talk to them, we have that connectivity. Now on top of that, we also are connected with US aid in the country, so that's another level of connectivity. And at a national and international level, we also have a direct line into the US Trade Representative's office in Washington, D.C., and that reports directly to the President of the US and is involved in any trade negotiations and so on. So we have those sort of connectivity. Then for Sri Lankan businesses maybe wanting to look into the United States, we work directly with the US Embassy in D.C. Their commercial minister, Charita Yatagodi, is very directly connected with us. So I think it's fair to say that over time we have built significant relationships and partnerships which we are then able to bring to our membership.
Shirendra, you spoke of a lot of ties and a lot of connectivity. I'm going to ask a question in a different angle now. The last few years were not the easiest for Sri Lanka, with the pandemic, with the Aragali economic crisis and all of that. So looking at how life was in the island in the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years, how would you say that impacted AMCHAM's positioning in terms of supporting Sri Lankan businesses and business interests with the US?
Well, as a business chamber, we have to add value to our members. We want them to feel that we are the go-to place if there's anything that comes up in their line of business where we can support them. Now, this can be to do with understanding tariffs. It can be to do with challenges with barriers to trade, anything like that. So particularly in times like the present, which have been a bit turbulent, well, I think we have added a reasonable amount of value to our members by giving them a route to find answers to those things. Now, on top of that, we also have a constant stream of webinars and seminars and so on and so forth. So we try to address topics that are likely to be of common interest to our members in those. And we tend to have a lot of significant presence at those at different levels depending on the event. Sometimes they can be relatively junior people who are involved in the day-to-day business, and sometimes quite senior people. And although we don't have a direct influence, we are able to some extent to support visa applications, which have always become a challenge at these times. So members would reach out to us and we would try to support them in their applications, though of course that, as I said, that's outside of our hands. That's managed by the consular section at the embassy.
Like you said, the chamber has been helping the members go through this difficult period. If we talk of the members themselves, the business community,
Sure.
How would you say how resilient or how strong were they when people were going through the mill?
Interesting. I think, as Sri Lankans and as Sri Lankan companies, we're pretty resilient. And we talk about the challenges of the last 2, 3, 4 years, but if you think about it, we're kind of used to dealing with challenge. If you go back to the ethnic conflict, the Asian crisis, we had to deal with Easter bombs and the after effects of that. And of course, then the COVID, which was just a little bit different because it was a significant global impact, and of course, more recently, the economic challenges. So I think if you look at how Sri Lankan businesses have coped with that, net, I think they've done pretty well, because businesses here tend to understand the importance of moving from sort of growth and expansion modes into survival mode. So I think that's probably a significant factor from our heritage that has supported us well in times of crisis. I mean, sometimes maybe even looking at every crisis as an opportunity, because there always is some opportunity that's sitting at the end of every crisis. And we as the Chamber would run events that cover topics like that through this time. Now, having said that, I think the cycles of growth and challenge have become shorter and shorter over time. So the playbook that organizations may have used 7 or 8 years ago is quite different to how it is now. And again, we try to watch what's happening in some of our member companies and how they're addressing that, and try to use that experience to help others who may have less experience.
Moving into a slightly different area of conversation, like you earlier said, AMCHAM has been here for 32 years, and I think it's one of the most influential business chambers in the country. How would you say the American Chamber of Commerce uses its resources to help Sri Lankan businesses enter the US market?
So particularly for new businesses entering who have probably less experience and understanding of the particular US market. And a lot of Sri Lankan companies have a lot of experience, say, for example, in Europe, and may have focused on that initially and then want to now focus on the US. What we would do is to try and gain them access first to trade statistics and the like in their industry. So when they connect with us, we would again work with our network and try and get them whatever information we can get for them directly. If we can't do that, or if there are other opportunities to give them direct connectivity, we will create those routes and opportunities for them as well. Then, having done that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a direct link into the Sri Lankan embassy in Washington, D.C., and the commercial team there is fairly helpful. So we would introduce them to the team there and lead them to, get to know, to understand how they might approach the particular area of business that they're in. We would also try and help them to understand if there are any tariff barriers that would get in their way. We would certainly see if we can open up any other doors that we can to help them. There is also the Sri Lanka US Chamber, which operates out of DC, but also has a network across the US, and we are linked to that organization as well. So if, for example, they're looking at trade on the West Coast, we are able to do it through that route. So that's generally what we would do, and then we'd work, kind of handhold them through the process, and then at a point where they feel comfortable, they tend to go off on their own. So that would tend to apply more to our sort of probationary members who come in afresh from the outside. And in fact, very often we have companies that are not members reach out, particularly the SME sector, where we have just a random call from someone to say, look, can you help us? And particularly in the sort of post-COVID environment, we've gone out of our way to run even events and seminars for non-member SME sector companies, particularly to see if we can encourage them to do business with the US rather than to approach us. So there is a slightly different cap we wear when we have to, depending on the business you're dealing with and the challenge they're dealing with.
It's time to take a very short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about AMCHAM in Sri Lanka.
What makes a truly awesome insurance company? Is it the skills to manage big numbers and big responsibilities? Well, that's definitely part of it. But there's more. It's the people. They're awesome. Super passionate about looking out for others and putting in their time for people's finances. It's not just the people. It's how we do things that's awesome. From being trendsetters of the industry to being connectors or inventors. It's about well-being and how we achieve it. Our teams hustle non-stop to meet the needs of the people. That's why we're on the rise. But it's not just about how we do things either. It's about how we improve things, helping our clients thrive in a world that's full of awesome goals to achieve. Making the maximum out of the minimum. But wait, there's more to it. There's one last thing that truly makes an insurance company awesome. It's that we care about our people and our customers. All of this combined, it's been a pretty awesome year. And we're excited for tomorrow.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with Shirendra Lawrence, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka. Shirendra, you mentioned that there were certain different levels in terms of how companies position themselves in entering or operating in the US. Across all categories, how attractive does the US market find Sri Lankan corporates, and of course vice versa?
Thanks, Ruwandi. Yeah, interesting one. I think firstly on this one, the attractiveness of Sri Lankan companies isn't just relevant to the US, it's relevant to a lot of other trading destinations anywhere in Europe, US and so on. So I think the benefits and opportunities we afford are consistent. Sitting at the top of the list, I would say English literacy and generally ease of doing business. Companies feel comfortable to come to a country where they can communicate well. Our communication skills are quite good. And this connects again with the literacy levels, the education standards in the country. So whether a company in the United States is choosing to do business with us from a point of view of trade, of products or services, the language, the literacy levels, the ability, all of that comes in as a complete package. So I think that's a good starting point. If you're looking at social, environmental compliance, we've always been a step ahead of our regional competitors. It's a bit subjective, but that would be my opinion. I think initially in the early days, social compliance was very important, and more recently, environmental compliance has become a big factor. So that plays high in the agenda. So I suppose also on top of that, if your trade requires you to come and spend times in our country and you happen to get caught for a weekend or something like that, it's always nice to be in a country where there's things for you to do at the weekend, you feel comfortable. And I think in that department, we score ahead of a number of our regional competitors as well.
Definitely.
So net, I think we're quite well-rounded in having good reasons to come here. Of course, there are some challenges, but what we would also try to do is to try and help companies that come from the US or have an interest in Sri Lanka to understand how we navigate those. And there is a way of navigating them. If you then look at the other side of the coin, what makes the US attractive to us? I think the first factor is the scale. Even if you have a small business and you're able to find a niche area for your business in the United States, it enables you to scale significantly. And so the opportunities are high. So it means you don't have to be going from one country to another country. You can focus on that country. Beyond that, again, language, communication is a good thing. It works well. And I think it's just the fact of the maturity. We've been dealing with the US for many, many years. People feel safe. They feel the business relations, the governance standards are able to, will give them comfort. So net, I think the US does become probably the single most attractive country to deal with. So I think that's been a significant factor that's seen the trade, as I said, both in goods and services increase over the years.
Shirendra, in one of your previous responses, you were talking about how much of connectivity there is between US and Sri Lanka in terms of trade and business interests. What are your recommendations to local corporates to capitalize and make use of these opportunities and these platforms and this connectivity to expand or operate in the US market?
Well, I think there is a tendency for companies to focus on goods and services that have been traditional. So companies naturally look at the areas that we've been working in for years and years. I think where there often is a big opportunity that goes unseen is goods and services, particularly goods, products that we haven't been focusing on before. So I think the first thing is for smaller companies who want to start business connections with the US, have a look if there's something that you can do that may be an opportunity that we have not focused on before. So we don't have to do the same thing every time. We can expand our horizons somewhat. So that would be one bit of advice I would give them. The other important thing to look at is, we all know there's tension between the US and the East, particularly with China. It's if you look at the current election campaign, it's a topic of serious discussion. And actually, whether you look at Republicans or Democrats, and whichever way things go, this is now a significant piece of how business operates in the US. So there are moves for companies that are traditionally sourced from China to at least become a China plus one.
Yeah.
Maybe in some cases even divest more and move away. Now, many American organizations may not focus on Sri Lanka. They may not even know anything about Sri Lanka. And the traditional countries they would look at would be Vietnam, India, maybe Malaysia, and that's where they would go. Now, indications are that with this tension, since COVID in particular, which was a big catalyst to this transformation, there's something like $150 billion of trade that is likely to be migrated outside of China. And we've done a fair amount of work on understanding this, understanding the sectors and so on, which we make available to our members. So if we could capture just a small part of that, it will be a significant change to our landscape.
Definitely.
So I think those are the areas that I would suggest that companies look at. It's also perhaps worth looking at areas where there might be grants or aid available. Again, we can also help that and facilitate that. So I think those are areas to look at in that context.
Lots of opportunities.
There are indeed. And as I said, a lot of it is non-traditional. Because people just tend to think of the traditional tea, rubber, coconut, apparel, the traditional products. Whereas actually there is a lot more scope sometimes in other areas.
We're nearing the end of our conversation, and before I let you go, we want to ask you about the very active calendar that AMCHAM has been maintaining. What does the Chamber do to give back when it comes to the community?
Good question, Ruwandi. I mean, giving back has been a significant part of what we do. I didn't mention it so far because we were focusing more on the business side, but it's glad you asked the question. So we run the Chamber through a calendar year. We have a board that is appointed every year. I myself, as the president, am appointed for a year. So what we tend to do at the beginning of each year is look at what are the strategies we're going to focus on. And typically there are 5 or 6 strategies. Now, at least one of those will revolve around corporate social responsibility. So, and then what we would do is look at what our plan is going to be for the year, what are the funds we think we can make available, and what we would like to focus on. Now, if you take the recent years, let's say the last year or two, we've tied up generally with organizations like Habitat or Apelanka. So we have a credible organization that we can present to our members, because at the end of the day, most of our events have some element of fundraising. It can be a direct fundraising where we have a raffle or something going in the middle of it, or it could be something where we just take part of the proceeds and donate them. So we would work with organizations like that, and our efforts have most recently been focused on the education sector and helping to improve the standards in the schools. So what we have done is a lot of work on, with a number of schools, we've expanded their toilet facilities, improved their toilet facilities. So that was one area we did over the last few years. Probably did that for half a dozen schools. We've also helped install reverse osmosis plants in schools, so that for schools that are struggling with clean sources of water for drinking, particularly for the children, we're able to make a difference. If you look at it net, probably something in the region of 10 to 20% of our income is given back through the CSR projects. So it's a reasonable amount of money, and in fact, sometimes we even tie up with our members. Our members might come to us with a particular project, or we might know that they're focused on a particular project and say, look, can we become a part of that? So through members and these other organizations, education and health tend to be the area of focus. And over the years, we've made some significant contributions.
It's been the most delightful conversation. And before we conclude...
Likewise.
Thank you. Before we conclude and, give our viewers something to think about, what are your concluding thoughts?
Well, I think if we just try to think about what we haven't covered and just give you a couple of things. For our members, not everything we do is serious business, and we do try to use our own member network to help other members have opportunities to maybe visit locations of other members. Also using our connectivity with the authorities. So, for example, a visit to the port city, which bigger companies here may have direct access to, but our smaller member companies would not have. Take them to the visitor center there and get the teams there to help them to understand the opportunities that it brings. So, like that, we have from time to time events where we would take our members into locations. That's one side of it. And of course, not everything is so serious. We do have a fun side to what we do. We do a fair amount of member networking. These can be very simple events like an evening, a quiz night, something like that. Just an opportunity to get people together. Yeah. Then we would have some flagship events. So we have a very formal Thanksgiving dinner. We also have at Christmas time a Yuletide festival. That actually is used also for a lot of fundraising. And probably our big event for the year is the AMCHAM ball, which is just a great time to get our members together to celebrate the relationships we have, the success we've had with them, and just have a good time with a bit of fundraising thrown in as well, always, of course. So through that, I think we have those sort of, and then once in a while, depending on topical subjects, for example, International Women's Day this year we did a big event. In fact, we did it very early in that calendar. There was a lot of things going on. We did an event where we focused on burnout, which is something that we're seeing increasingly in the workplace. And so we had both people who had struggled with this challenge, as well as doctors and so on. So we try to keep those type of events very topical and relevant, because we're very conscious that we're just one organization out there when it comes to running events like this, and we want to make sure that we're using our network to give people something different.
We've been in conversation with Shirendra Lawrence, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka. Shirendra, thank you very much for an insightful and a delightful conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Ruwandi. Thanks.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.